The moment the spoon touched my lips, something felt wrong. But it wasn't the gravy, it was the way my son was staring at me. Too eager, too focused, as if he wasn't waiting for me to taste it, but for something to happen. So instead, I smiled, slid my plate across the table, and said, "Sweetheart, you try it first." He froze, and that's when the entire room went silent because the truth started spilling out faster than the gravy itself.
The house smelled of cinnamon, sage, and roasted turkey, a blend of warmth and memory that had always made Thanksgiving my favorite holiday. Not because of the tradition itself, but because for one day each year, my family pretended to be whole again, pretended that the fractures running through us were not as deep as they were, pretended that time hadn't changed the shape of our love. But this year, as I stood over the counter stirring mashed potatoes, something heavy hung in the air. Something I couldn't name, but felt in the stiffness of my shoulders and the tightness in my jaw. My son, Daniel, was already here, too early. Earlier than he'd ever been in the last decade of holidays, where I'd gotten used to receiving the text, "Running a little late, Mom." But today, he had shown up 2 hours before dinner, stepping into the kitchen with a bright, strained smile and a bowl covered with foil. "I made special gravy," he had announced, lifting it like some kind of offering, "just for you." It should have been sweet. It should have touched me. Instead, I felt the same chill I feel when a dog suddenly stops barking and begins staring at something unseen. He hovered in the kitchen, wiping non-existent crumbs from the counter, asking if I needed help, if the turkey was done, if the table was set. Questions he'd never asked in his adult life. Daniel, my brilliant, stubborn, once lovely boy, had grown distant in the last few years. Calls were short, visits were shorter. His marriage had fallen apart, and I had tried not to pry, even though mothers always know more than their children tell them. He'd grown harder, quieter, and sometimes his eyes held something resentful, something I didn't understand. But I loved him. He was my child, the one I carried beneath my heart for 9 months, the one whose forehead I kissed every night until he decided he was too old for bedtime kisses. But now he stood too close, his smiles too quick, his laugh too hollow. That bowl of gravy sat on the counter like it was waiting for a cue to enter the story. "I really want you to try it," he said at one point, his voice light but tight. I spent all night perfecting it. A strange unease crawled up my spine. We moved to dinner, candles lit, tablecloth smoothed, family gathered. Daniel sat to my right, just like he used to as a little boy, never liking to sit far from me, always wanting my attention. But tonight, the closeness felt different, watching me, watching the bowl. When the turkey was carved, when the plates were passed, Daniel leaned forward and slid the small bowl toward me. "Mom, try this special gravy I made." The bowl was warm, steam curled up, carrying an unfamiliar, slightly metallic scent. Not unpleasant, just wrong. I stirred it with the ladle. Thick, darker than normal gravy. The smell that rose felt heavier, almost bitter beneath the herbs. My stomach tightened. Across the table, I noticed Daniel watching me with a focus so intense it felt like a spotlight. I lifted the spoon, and that metallic scent hit me again. Sharp. Something inside me, the part that kept Daniel safe when he was a baby, the part that could sense his fevers before they spiked, the part that had woken up in the middle of the night moments before he cried, whispered, "No." Mothers know, sometimes without knowing how. I lowered the spoon. Daniel blinked, surprised. "Aren't you going to taste it?" I smiled softly. "Of course I am." Then, as casually as taking a breath, I slid my plate toward him. "But you try it first. You're the chef." His face drained so quickly it was like watching blood disappear through the floorboards. I already tasted it, Mom." I tilted my head. "I didn't see you." His hand jerked, a tiny movement, but noticeable. His throat bobbed. The air changed. The clatter of forks quieted. The room held its breath. "Daniel," I said gently, "try it." For a moment, he looked like a terrified little boy again. Then he pushed back his chair, standing so fast it scraped loudly against the floor. "I said I already tasted it." His voice cracked like glass. Conversation died. My niece froze mid-reach. My brother's eyes widened. My sister-in-law looked down, as if the tablecloth suddenly became fascinating. I stayed seated, calm, watching my son unravel. Because now I wasn't scared for myself. I was scared for him. He stormed into the kitchen, pacing. I stood and followed quietly. He didn't hear me at first. His hands shook as he pressed them against the counter. His shoulders trembled, and then he whispered something that shredded the air between us. "I couldn't let you take everything from me, Mom." My mouth went dry. "Daniel, what are you talking about?" He turned. His eyes were shiny, red-rimmed, broken. "Do you know what it feels like?" he said, voice trembling. "To have nothing, to lose your marriage, to lose your home, to have your own father leave everything to you in a will, and then find out he changed it before he died and left it all to you?" His voice cracked on the last word, pointing at me like it was a crime. And suddenly, I understood. My husband, his father, had changed his will before he passed. I had begged him not to tell Daniel while he was going through a rough patch. "He needs stability," I had said, "not disappointment." So we kept it quiet. Daniel thought he was inheriting the house, the savings, the land, the stocks. Then he found out, not because we told him, but because his lawyer ex-wife did, out of spite. "Do you know what it felt like?" he whispered. "To realize you picked her over me?" His chest heaved. "You always pick her. You always pick everyone else." My heart splintered. "Daniel, that's not true. You lie. You said you'd take care of me. You said you'd help me get back on my feet. But you kept everything. And now look at me. My life is falling apart." He shoved the bowl. It slid across the counter, sloshing. "And I thought—" His voice faltered. He looked away, ashamed. "I thought if you weren't here anymore, everything would go back to how it was supposed to be." My breath caught. He covered his face. "I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted my life back." And the tragedy in his voice was worse than the fear. I stepped forward. "Daniel," I whispered, "look at me. Whatever is happening in your life, we fix it together. But you don't fix pain by destroying someone who loves you." He sobbed into his palms, shaking violently. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I closed the distance and held him like I did when he was 5 years old and woke from nightmares. He collapsed into me, crying, broken, ashamed, and terrified of himself. My son, my baby, lost in a darkness he didn't know how to navigate.
When we returned to the table, the family stared, confused, concerned. I simply said, "Dinner's over. Daniel isn't feeling well." And no one asked questions. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the edge of my bed while Daniel slept in the guest room upstairs, the same room he slept in as a teenager, walls still painted blue. I watched the moonlight spilling through the window and wondered where I had gone wrong, how love could twist into desperation, how fear could turn someone into someone unrecognizable. But I also knew this. I wasn't going to lose my son to his own darkness. The next morning, we talked for hours about everything: his marriage, his debts, his drinking, his loneliness, his resentment, his fear of disappointing me, his feeling that life kept ripping things from him. We talked until his shoulders eased and his breathing steadied. We talked until he realized he didn't want to die, and he didn't want me to either. We talked until the first hope in his voice appeared in months. He checked himself into therapy, into financial counseling, into rebuilding himself. It took months. Long months, hard months, but eventually he became someone he could look at in the mirror again. Years later, when people complimented his cooking, he would joke, "I only make gravy under supervision now." And we would laugh. Even though every Thanksgiving after that, I never forgot the moment I switched plates. I never forgot the look in his eyes. I never forgot how close I came to losing him, not because he hated me, but because he was drowning and thought dragging me under would make it stop. But Thanksgiving didn't die that year. My son lived. Our family lived. And the story that could have ended in tragedy became instead a story of truth, forgiveness, and survival. Because when you love someone, truly love them, you fight for them. You face the darkness with them. And sometimes you save them from themselves.